Master, I want to see. What does Bartimaeus want to see? Obviously, he wants to see because he was blind physically. But today's gospel describes not just physical blindness, but also the spiritual blindness. Because what we see is how we live. What we see is how we live. Let me share with you 3 stories as a way to illustrate my point. The first story comes from today's gospel. What did the disciples and the people see in Jesus? They saw Jesus as the king on the way to Jerusalem to claim his kingship. You remember last week's gospel, right? James and John told Jesus, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And Jesus asked, "What do you want?" "We want to sit one at your right hand and the other at your left." Now the story happened within the context that Jesus just told them right before this passage. We are going to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and the scribes. So they will mock him, spit upon him, scourge him, and put him to death. So what did disciples and the people see in Jesus? The king on the way to Jerusalem to claim his kingship, the king of power and authority who will overthrow the Roman Empire. But Jesus corrected them. You don't get it. The Son of Man did not come to serve, but to be served. Did not come to be served, but to serve. And he gave his life as a ransom for many. Yes, Jesus is the king of power and authority, but not by military or weapons, but by his love and service. What about Bartimaeus? Bartimaeus, what did he see in Jesus? Listen to his plea. "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." He saw Jesus as the Son of David, merciful, and have the power to heal him. So when people rebuke him, telling him to be silent, what did Bartimaeus do? He kept crying out the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." When Bartimaeus came to Jesus, what did Jesus see in him? Now, most people, if not all, saw the blind man as handicapped, unclean, and perhaps a sinner. What did Jesus see in Bartimaeus? A man with great faith. Jesus was so moved that he said, "Go your way. Your faith has saved you." Now the story did not end there. Instead of going home, Bartimaeus chose to follow Jesus to Jerusalem. Why did he choose to follow Jesus? Unlike the disciples, perhaps Bartimaeus saw Jesus as the Son of David, merciful, and has the power to heal him. What we see is how we live. The second story is about myself and my mom. What did I see in my mom? Obviously, I saw her as a mom. I took her for granted. If I have to be honest, I felt entitled to everything. You know, mom is supposed to cook, to do laundry, take care of the children, right? Moving forward, when I was 14 years old, my mom sent me to escape from Vietnam to Thailand and eventually to US due to communism. She wanted me to have a better life. 11 years later, I came back to see my mom in Vietnam. What did I see in her? You might think that after 11 years away from her and after being educated in America, I should be able to open my eyes to see and appreciate my mom more. Unfortunately, that was not the case. I saw my mom as irresponsible mom, as some people put it, who abandoned me to escape from Vietnam to Thailand and eventually to U.S. I felt resentment toward her for sending me to escape to the U.S., leaving my family and my country behind. I was so blind to see her love for me that she wanted me to have a better life. It took me years to open my eyes to see the truth and the goodness in my mom. What we see is how we live. Third story, the migrant caravan. What do we see in migrants? Lately, we've been hearing on the news that thousands of migrants from Central America heading toward the U.S. And some decide to seek asylum in Mexico, while majority continue to the U.S. What do we see in the migrants? J.D. Long Garcia wrote an article on America Jesuit magazine entitled, "The Migrant Caravan Through the Eyes of the Catholic Social Teaching." J.D., the author, tried to explain how we Catholics wrestle with the issue by looking at two key principles of the Catholic social teaching: the right to migrate and the right of sovereign nations to control their borders. Whether we believe or not, the Catholic Church does support the nation to have the borders. In some way, these two key principles, the right to migrate and the right of sovereign nations to control the borders, are not really unique in the Catholic social teaching. And what's unique is what we see and how we see these immigrants and how we respond to them. What unique is what and how we Catholics see these immigrants and how we respond to them. What do we see these immigrants? At the end of the articles, there was about 64 comments responding to the article. So let me name a few. Remember, these readers, I assume they are Catholic or Christians. Some see these immigrants as lawbreakers. Roland wrote, and I quote, "And Jesus said unto them, Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's." So he continued, "Parents who teach their children that it's okay to break the law are not good parents. I would not want them as neighbors," unquote. Others see these immigrants as asylum seekers. Ellen wrote, and I quote, "It is not illegal to request asylum in the U.S. It is not Christian to try to palm off the render unto Caesar line to wipe out everything that Christ said about how to treat your neighbors." Now, some see these immigrants as invaders and irresponsible mothers, just like my mom. Author wrote, and I quote, "This is an invasion by a horde who claim that they are somehow entitled to enter the USA by any means of necessary, regardless of both sovereign law and international law. And that is an invasion pure and simple. And I hope Trump does call out the military to stop it," unquote. And others see these immigrants as pilgrims. Applejack wrote, and I quote, "The book of Exodus in the Bible describes a similar caravan of political refugees. These pilgrims was a highly regarded group, as the story goes," unquote. Now, some see these immigrants as illegal aliens. Greg wrote, and I quote, "Illegal aliens must be blocked from entering the U.S. or else immediately jailed and deported." But others see them as political refugees. Applejack wrote, and I quote, "These are not illegal aliens, as you have assumed," he responded to Greg. "They are political refugees seeking asylum just as our ancestors have before them." What about you and me? What do you see these immigrants? What do I see in these immigrants? Today's readings, we are invited to reflect upon the question of our sights and our perceptions, because what we see is how we live. What do we see in Jesus? What do we see in ourselves? What do we see in our family members? What do we see in our neighbors, including migrants? Because what we see is how we live. Amen.